It is now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today. Reverend Sally Robbins has been a minister for 25 years and is ordained by the Centers for Spiritual Living. Reverend Sally has been a senior minister of 3 churches in her career, the first in Baltimore, Maryland, the second in Columbia, Maryland, and then the third in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as being a staff minister with us at Creative Living Fellowship. In addition, Reverend Sally is a contributing writer to the Science of Mind magazine. She has also served at the national level of Centers for Spiritual Living in a variety of roles, including 3 times being named co-chair of the CSL Event Committee. Such fun. Reverend Sally is a sought-after speaker and teacher, and you can find her on her website at sallyrobbins.net. Would you please help me welcome one of my favorite friends, Reverend Sally Robbins.
Oh, thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, CLF. Thank you, Dr. Sherry, for inviting me to be a part of this wonderful group. You are my favorite group on the planet. Don't tell anybody I said that, but you are my favorite. And I really love being with you, and the consciousness of this entire community comes forward so much, and I just drink it in every time. I am so glad to be with you. So I'm going to start this morning talking about the secret of real compassion. And way back in the 80s, don't I sound old when I say that, but way back in the 80s, I was living in Chicago at the time, and it was a bitter February night. I had just finished an event. I was an event planner and did large corporate events, usually in hotel ballrooms. And this particular one happened to be in Chicago. And so I was at a hotel and finished around midnight or so, walked out into a very frigid night. It was around 0, if my memory serves right. The wind was blowing, so it was well below 0 with a chill factor. And I remember getting to my car and going, I get to sit in my car and I can get the heater going while I drive home. So I pull out of the parking lot, and it was very close to where the interstate was, and I pulled onto the ramp of the interstate to head home. Almost immediately, my engine stops. It literally just died. And because I was on an incline getting up the ramp, my car pretty much stopped at that moment too. And I was in the middle of the lane of the ramp. And when you're in a large city like Chicago, there's traffic all the time. So there were cars starting to be behind me. So I get out of my car, and the door closed, my driver door closed, and I realized I was going to have to push it off. Now I'm in a business suit and heels, and I had my winter coat on, but my legs were totally exposed and I was freezing. And I'm in my heels. Then I realized I'm going to have to push the car off to the side of the ramp. And I start to do that, and I realized as I went to open my driver door that the ice had frozen the locks. From that, the next day on, I always carried lock de-icer in my purse for that very purpose. But it was frozen shut. So I had to open the back door of the 4-door and push the car in my heels with the wind blowing off to the side of the road. Now, these other cars just went right onto the ramp and went on their merry way. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, could anybody just stop and help? But one car did. This gentleman pulls over. He had this, it was like a Lincoln or a Cadillac or some big car, pulls off to the side of the road. He sees me pushing my car from the back door. He sees me doing that. He gets out and he goes, "Let me help you." He helps me push it off to the side, so at least we're safe now. And he says, "Let me drive you somewhere," because we knew it would take a long time for a tow truck to show up. And he said, "Let me drive you home." And I said, "Oh, I was way out in the west suburbs." I said, "I live downtown. That's way out of your way." And he said, "No, let me take you." So I did that internal check, and my voice said, "Yes, it's okay." So I got in his car. I remember sinking into his leather seats and being so grateful that there was heat. I was so cold by that time. He's driving me home, very nice man. And it turns out he lives all the way on the south side. And I said to him, "Oh my goodness, you are going way out of your way." And he said, "That's okay. That's okay." I said, "It's at least 45 minutes downtown. Then you've got to come back out and then go back down." We're talking adding over an hour to his trip. He goes, "It's okay." He said, "A month ago, my wife was in a similar situation, and her car literally stopped in the middle on a bridge in the middle lane, and no one would stop and help her. Finally, someone did and was able to get her safely and the car safely off to the side." And he said, "I was so grateful for that individual that I decided that I was going to help whoever was next. And you happened to be the one." I was so grateful for this man. And I remember thinking the compassion, the kindness that he showed that night, because it really was an inconvenience for him to take me all the way home, but he wanted to make sure that I got safe. So I've always remembered that story. I can't remember his name. I don't remember much about, he told me where he worked, and I don't remember any of that. I just remember the energetic feeling of being with someone who truly cared, who had compassion for seeing a woman trying to literally get her car off the highway. And I did a little research on compassion because I've been wondering about that myself. What is it about that really wants us to help in that way? And this came from greatergood.com. Scientists have started to map the biological basis of compassion, suggesting its deep evolutionary purpose. This research has shown that when we feel compassion, our heart rate slows down. We secrete the bonding hormone oxytocin, and regions of the brain light up. They're linked to empathy, and they start lighting up. And that often results in our wanting to approach and care for other people. And I started thinking, well, why don't we light up those parts of the brains all the time? What is it about this? And I found a story that greatly exaggerates that idea. And it talks about this man who got in a cab one day, and as he's riding in the cab, they were in the right lane of heavy traffic, but there were parked cars on the side. And right before they reached a certain car, it pulled out like really quick. And the cab driver had to go, and put on the brakes, and they stopped within inches of the car. And then the driver of the car that had pulled out leans out of the window and starts yelling at the cab driver, and shaking his fist. And the cab driver's reaction was priceless. This man is watching the whole thing from the back seat. The cab driver smiles at him, waves, and continues on like nothing had happened. And the man in the back seat says, "Wait a minute, that guy almost killed us, almost ruined your cab. How can you not let that bother you?" And the cab driver says, "Well, someone told me about this thing called the law of the garbage truck." "The law of the garbage truck? What is that?" And he went on to explain that many people go around this life filled with all kinds of garbage, and they could be full of frustration, they could be full of anger, and they're full of disappointment. They're like walking garbage trucks. And as their garbage piles up within them, they need a place to dump it. And sometimes they dump it on you. And he went on to explain, when that happens, when someone just backs the truck up and dumps all that garbage on you, don't take it personally. He said, just smile, wave, wish them well, and move on. And most importantly, don't take their garbage and then go and put it onto somebody else. I love that idea, the law of the garbage truck, because have you met a garbage truck in your life? I've met many of them. And they literally are these wounded souls who just have to dump something somewhere. You happen to be the place. And when we don't take it personally, when we have compassion that they too are our brother or sister, that's when we get that oxytocin, and we get that we lift ourselves to a higher plane of living and loving, and we're showing up as God. And so one of my friends had belonged to another denomination of a New Thought religion. And he said one of their main mantras was this. I'm going to share my screen and share it with you, because I love how they think about this. And when I think and their mantra is, let love radiate without concern for results. Isn't that great? Let love radiate without concern for results. Because too many times I've gotten caught up in, I'm here to manifest. Are you with me on that? I'm here to manifest. I want things to happen in my life. Boom, 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 boom. Let's manifest. Let's get going. And when I get to that place, I forget the real reason why I'm here. The real reason is to show up as love, and manifesting takes care of itself when you're showing up as love. Sometimes we get that backwards. And many times we get stuck in that second realm of, life is here for me, and I can manifest what I need to. That's a wonderful place, but we're not meant to stay there and camp out. We're meant to go to the next two phases of our evolution, which is God through me and God as me. And so let love radiate without concern for results. I love it. I take that to heart, because as I know that, as I'm simply to show up as love and as compassion in this world, and then I get to reap the benefit of that with no concern for how I'm being taken care of, and no concern with what is coming and what is going. The flow is always there, taking care of every need as I need it. Lloyd Strong said this. He said, "It is not uncommon for individuals attracted to metaphysical teachings to attempt to use spiritual laws to get what they want without having to undergo personal change." Amen to that. I've been there. Have you? And when I get to that place where I think, well, I'm just here to manifest, I don't recognize that I am here to become that which I'm to become the prosperity, to become the love, to become the perfect career, job, whatever it is, to know that as I grow in my evolution and my evolvement into the spiritual being that I already am, I'm just taking the things off. When I get to that point, it's not about manifesting. It really is about letting ourselves become that which we already are. Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith says it best. We're not here to get, we're here to let. And isn't that the truth? We're here to let spirit use us as instruments for good on this planet, just as that man did all those many years ago. He was simply an instrument for good on my path. And he didn't know me from Adam. Our paths crossed, and he showed up as the God that gave me great confidence in humanity. And I want to pay that forward. I always want to be that too. And something happens when we express compassion. We're talking about that all this month at CLF. Something happens in that compassionate state of being. Martha Beck wrote a wonderful blog about how one day she was meditating on her front porch. She was just sitting there, and that meditation just became so idyllic. And in the background, she could hear this flock of turkeys, wild turkeys. She lived way out in the woods. And this flock of turkeys would come running up her road to go to her bird feeder, and they would like peck on the ground and whatever had been left over from the birds had thrown down. And this was their thing they did every day. So she didn't even react to it. She heard the turkeys, coming up the road, and she's still meditating. And the meditation she was doing was, I am infinite stillness. I am infinite stillness. And as she's meditating on this mantra, all of a sudden she opens her eyes. She realizes the turkeys have stopped right in front of her. The whole flock has stopped right in front of her. They're looking at her as she's zenning out. I am infinite stillness. She said not one feather moved, not one foot moved. Everybody was just stopped and staring at her. This was new. She had never experienced this before. And she said, in that moment, she realized, oh my goodness, they're tuned into me. And she remembered that in the 1600s, a Dutch physicist had found that when you took two metronomes, you know, the things that you can put on the piano and then go back and forth. Well, if you put them and they start and they're doing, eventually what they do is they become one. They synchronize. He found that this, whatever it was, whether it was heartbeats or musical notes or even just people's energy, there was a synchronization that happened. There was an energetic exchange. And it's called entrainment. And she remembered this philosophy and this scientific data that she was experiencing entrainment. The turkeys had tuned into her Zen meditation and were just mesmerized. They just were relaxed, they were calm, and they were staring at her on her front porch. She realizes and she starts to count. She's like, there's a lot of them here. She starts to count each of them. She counted 21, and she realized as soon as she started counting, she was out of that energetic flow. And the turkey started to move around a little. So she went back to, I am infinite stillness. I am infinite stillness. And she said when she did that, the energy went right back out to the turkeys, and they all plopped down and just sat there meditating with her. And so she says, you are the master of the energy that you radiate. This is one of the secrets of compassion that I promised to share with you today. And that is, you are the master, just like the man and the cab driver. He was the master of the energy. He didn't have to pick up the energy of anyone else who was frustrated and upset. He got to choose what energy he was going to radiate out. And in that place, we are the heart of compassion, the heart of love, the heart of stillness, serenity, all of that, the things that we know are deeply indwelling within us, and we allow them to come forth in all their beauty and glory. And so I love that turkeys of all things, taught Martha Beck that this was a way for her to be in total charge of who and how she was going to present herself in this world. So could it be easy, as easy as showing up as love in everything you do? Could it be as simple as showing up as love in everything that you do? Well, simple, yes. Easy, no. Because it's a simple concept. Yes, this is how we do it. And it is very difficult in the world in which we live to maintain that presence. Would you agree with that? That is very difficult when you have things swirling around you sometimes, and you have people with, I'll just call it unskilled behavior. That's one of my favorite. It's unskilled behavior that is not loving, it is not kind. When you have that coming at you, you still are in control. So it's an easy concept, but it's very hard to continually practice. And yet, that's our work. That's what we're here to do. There's no thing more important than that, is to practice. And some of us have been given the grace of a lot of practice with difficult people in our lives. And that's the beauty. This is what I've come here to be and to do, and I'm not going to let anybody knock me off center. And I can't let this talk of compassion go without compassion for ourselves, Because if you're like me, no one will ever be harder on you than you are, right? We're all so critical of ourselves. And one of my favorite stories around that is by Debbie Ford, who wrote wonderful books. The book that I'm going to be quoting from is called Your Holiness. And she was just an incredible light here, was on Oprah and just did many, many great things. But many, many years ago, before her enlightenment occurred, she tells the story of how she was living in Miami. She was living a life that seemingly had it all. She owned a huge high-end clothing store. She partied with all the elite of Miami. She drove a white Porsche, and she was just like living the high life. She also was a drug addict, and she freely admits that this was a huge, huge issue for her. Well, she tells a story in Your Holiness about how she had been living this hard life, and she'd met a new friend, and she said, I thought this was the perfect friend, because this person worked in a pharmacy, and she'd given her a huge bottle of Percodans. And so 2 weeks later, she realized she'd gone through the entire bottle, and there was 1,000 pills in that bottle. This woman was deeply, deeply addicted. And she said she checked herself into a rehab for the 4th time. And on day 10 of this 4th time at the rehab, she started feeling something. And she said every time on the day 10, she'd start to where she would be clean enough where she started feeling good, but then she started getting scared because her demons were still there. And so she would convince the rehab staff, you know what, I'm healed. Everything's ready to go. I'm good. And she would basically leave the rehab. She never got past day 10, but this day 10 was different because she knew that as soon as she left the rehab, she'd go back into that vicious cycle of addiction. And she said, I'm not going to do that this time. This time, I'm going to really own up to this. And she left the group session she was in, and she made her way to the bathroom in the rehab there. And she said, it was a filthy bathroom. It was awful. It smelled like dried urine. She said there was like, instead where the tile had the grout, it had turned black because there was mold in it. It was just gross. And she said she found herself falling to her knees, shaking and crying because this was such a pivotal moment for her. And she knew she had to do something to turn everything around. And the self-hatred, she was so tired of the self-hatred. And in that moment, she prayed the serenity prayer, and she prayed it. And then she kept saying, God, give me the courage to change. Give me the courage to change. And then something shifted in her. Something started happening. She said a peace came over her and a stillness that she hadn't felt in a long time. And out of that pain that she was in, something started lifting her up. And she found hope. She's like, I can get through this. I know somehow I can. And she discovered the God within her, and she wanted to know more. So every day for the next 18 days until that 28-day rehab term was over, she would go into the bathroom. She called it her holy sanctuary. She would get on her knees and she would pray again and try to instill that feeling within her of knowing that God within her and finding the compassion for herself. Instead of beating herself up, just saying, you know what, I got myself into this predicament, I can get out. And that changed everything. And she said, this was a place where I could reconnect with the all-loving presence that had delivered me to the higher aspect of myself. And so when she got to that place, she knew that life was changing right then and right there. And so from that moment on, she was moving into a whole new place of being. And she says, do not for one more minute deny your holiness, your godliness, and the power of your true self, because you are wanted, needed, and more importantly, a holy addition to this world. So open up, commit, and enjoy this journey, your holy ride. Isn't that beautiful? Let's take a breath after that. Just feel that connecting presence that is always there for us, the self-compassion which then can be turned out into full compassion for everyone and everything in our world. See, we're the only ones who can choose our vibrational energies. We're the only ones. And our thoughts and our emotions, the images we hold in our mind, the energetic signals that we send out to everyone around us, we're like broadcasting radio stations is what we are. These are the tools to the secret of our compassion. And as we use these tools again and again and again, we move to a place of greater understanding of how powerful and how holy we are. And as we show up as love, as spirit, as God, as Buddha, whatever name we choose to call it, we know from whence we came, and no one and no thing can knock us from that center point. Debbie developed cancer and has since passed. But I love this phrase that she left with us. All illness, including my cancer, is an invitation to love ourselves more. That's powerful. That she recognized that even the cancer that was eating her life away was an invitation to love herself more. What a beautiful example. What a beautiful example she has left. And a chance for all of us to recognize that we are here to love and to create love, power, beauty. That's all I'm here to do. I'm going to close with a wonderful story that Reverend Karen Frost shared on Facebook. And Reverend Karen is the minister of the Center for Spiritual Living in Oklahoma City. But she posted this, and the title was, "What's the kindest thing a stranger has ever said to you or done for you?" And a woman underneath it responded. She said, "I used to manage an LGBT bookstore when bookstores were still a thing. One night, they got a phone call into the bookstore. She answered it, and he said, 'I think I might be gay, and I'm considering self-harm. I don't know what to do.' And she said, 'We're not a crisis center.' She said, 'I didn't know what to do, but I knew if I kept him on the phone and kept talking, that he would stay out of harm. So that's what I did. I just kept talking to him, asking him questions, showing concern and compassion. So I talked to this guy,' she says, 'and I answer his questions, and I'm trying to be encouraging, and maybe I'm sounding a little frantic, and I'm definitely ignoring the 4 to 5 customers in the store. And this angel of a woman puts her hand on my shoulder and asks for the phone. My turn,' she says. So I talk to this guy and I answer questions. And when she says my turn, she gives the phone to the woman. And she, this 50-something lesbian, talks to this stranger on the phone. And a line forms behind her. Every customer in that store knows that call, knows that feeling. And every person takes a turn talking to this man. Now, we'll never know what happened to that young man. But we do know that in that moment, love showed up. Compassion showed up. Care, consideration, concern, kindness showed up. And so I invite you this week, how are you showing up? Even in the midst of whatever drama might be happening in your life, let's show up as love. Let's show up as compassion. Let's show up as kindness. Let's take that in prayer. If you feel comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes with me. Let's take a deep cleansing breath in. We've just shared a lot. But energetically, I know this, that the truth is that we are all one, and that what I do to myself, what I do to others, it's all impactful. And I know that my energy is the only gift that I really, truly give to this world. And so I know that I stand firm in my commitment right now, that I am here to be a beacon of hope, a beacon of light, a showplace of power, showing what powerful spiritual showmanship looks like. Powerful spiritual onemanship, because I am here to recognize that we are all one. We are all one. And so I know that in this place of oneness, I radiate to everyone who hears my voice, who comes in contact with me, that reads the words that I write, that hears the songs that I sing, however we communicate in this world. That energy goes forward and it touches all. It radiates outward to the world. And so I show up today with my gift being love, my gift being power, my gift being compassion, kindness, concern, care, consideration for others, knowing that what I do for my brother or sister, I do for myself. And so I simply say, thank you, Spirit, for the opportunity to be the instrument for good in this world, and to recognize that all is indeed coming together in perfection, in divine right order. And I simply need let go of my need to fix, of my need to manifest, I simply show up as love and allow it to be. That is all that is needed. The energy that I radiate is all that is needed. I simply let it be so. I give great thanks for the opportunity to be in connection with each and every person here today and to know the truth about them as well as about myself, that I am a living, breathing instrument for good, a living, breathing instrument of God. And wherever I go, that energy is right there with me. I simply let go and let it be so. And together we say, and so it is.